Hello, everyone. My name is Weston Kanishi. I'm president of the Sake Brewers Association of North America. Um, uh, if you don't know about us, please visit our website to have a webinar with with one of our newest members of the association, Wetlands Sake, out of New Orleans, Louisiana. We initially were going to have just a few of the staff join us tonight, but we're really pleased to have the owner, Lindsay Beard, join us as well. So really happy about that. Before we get started, just a few things. This session will be recorded, so if you want to watch it another time, please look out for it on our website or our YouTube channel. It should come out in the coming days. Also, we will keep this to about an hour-long session, but before we finish, we'll reserve about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A, and our panelists will answer your questions. You can submit questions via the chat, the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. So please feel free to submit questions throughout the session. And again, as we get close to the end of the session, we will try to answer as many of your questions as possible. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Patrick Shearer, who's going to be moderating tonight's discussion. Patrick.
Hey everybody, Patrick Shearer. I'm the head brewer at Ben's American Sake in Asheville, North Carolina. I moved out to the East Coast after having brewed beer, wine, and sake in Oregon. So happy to be here, and I think we'll introduce everybody else.
Lindsay?
Hi, everyone. How are y'all doing tonight? I'm Lindsay. I am one of the co-founders for Wetlands Sake. And I originally come out of the hospitality industry, and now I am obviously full-time working with at Wetlands. I'm happy to be here tonight.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. Katrina.
Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Katrina. I'm the director of marketing for Wetlands. I've been with the company since February. So I'm definitely pretty excited to talk to you guys about what's unique about this company and how I got here and what my pathway has been.
Great. And last but not least, Hector.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hector Meier. I'm the head brewer at Wetlands Sake. I've started here since July. As an engineer turned brewer, beer brewer to sake brewer. So welcome, everyone.
Awesome. So like small world kind of coincidence, Katrina and I know each other from the beer world. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we met each other at like a Cheers to Belgian Beers event in like maybe 2018, 2017, where we were both working for like East Side, like Portland breweries.
Exactly right. Yeah. I think that event in general is like pretty hazy for most people, but I mean, yeah, I think that's right.
A lot of beer events can definitely be hazy for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. You met my wife. She was running beer events in Oregon as well. We had a connection for a brief moment, and then sort of on a whim, we decided to move to North Carolina and rejoin the sake industry.
Yeah, and right around the same time, I left the beer industry in Portland and moved to Dublin. So we kind of scattered. Like, and then it was funny because like there was one day and I was on the Wetlands social media and I got a message, and I guess it was from your personal account, just being like, hey, can you send me some sake? And I did the whole spiel of like, no, we can't, Louisiana, it's not legal, we can't ship alcohol. And then just through like a kind of back and forth conversation, you were like, are you Katrina from Portland, Oregon that worked for that brewery? I was like, yeah. How did you know? So that was kind of funny.
Yeah, small world indeed.
Yeah.
Of course, like my wife had mentioned it, but like at the time it didn't really connect, and it was like, oh, wait a second, like now this is all adding up.
Yeah.
How has your transition from beer to sake been?
It's been pretty seamless. No huge surprises, nothing drastically different, because the thing about sake that's interesting is that it's kind of like a periphery beverage. Like it works in the margins of like all of the other alcoholic beverages. So if you really have experience in any of them, you already kind of have a start in how you're going to talk about marketing with sake. So with beer specifically, it really does end up being just like a tangent industry, especially in a place like New Orleans, which is vastly different from like the Portland beer industry, which is the most advanced in the country. New Orleans is, you know, still kind of like gearing up and defining like what that means and what it means to be a beer consumer. So when I first moved here last summer, I went right into the beer industry. It was marketing for a beer company, and then transitioned to Wetlands like 6 months later. So I already had a little bit of an intro into what it meant to like get involved with in general, the alcoholic beverage industry of New Orleans, which is super specific and doesn't really relate to like any other industry that I've ever been in before. And I've worked in beer in Denver, Colorado, like Austin, Texas, Portland, Oregon. Like it's, you know, all the big like beer destinations.
Yeah, you fit the spots.
Yeah, it's just, I followed the hipster trail.
Right.
And here now, I think that this is like the last frontier of the alcoholic beverage industry. So it's pretty exciting to see how people have been responding to it here, which is very positive.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know when we moved from Portland to Asheville, Asheville has an established beer scene. But to be honest, like we couldn't really like help ourselves. Like, oh, we're like the Portland scene is just a little more, it's just so much more developed. And like, it's hard to kind of explain, like, even if you have like a brewing district of like 6 breweries, like, oh, well, you know, Portland's, you know, 150 breweries or something like that, like within city limits. But yeah, that's something that we've been focused on, is kind of like getting locals and like, not just the tourists, because like Asheville is a very touristy area, but like how do we get kind of that reoccurring customer and that consistent business from the locals? And like I think we've been making steady progress by, you know, always improving like consistency and quality and all those things.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, like kind of a different, it'll look different, like our pathway in the same regard. So because we opened, so basically we started distribution in like February, March, and our tap room's not open yet. And that's really just COVID based. You know, the idea, like you have a nice tidy idea, like anybody, like any of y'all listening that are like brewers, sake, or any other industry, like, you know, that the plans that you make for like when you're going to open and like how tidy and nice and like easy things are going to be, it's not that. It's like the opposite. And everything takes 50% longer than you thought it was going to. So like out of pandemic on top of that, like we originally, like the idea was to create like this very nice, seamless, like tap room experience along with, you know, like opening right up into distribution right away. So basically we started first in distribution, and that's kind of our call to action has been like from a marketing standpoint is like, okay, go to purchase this product, go find it. And also like the lifestyle element too. So this summer when our tap room opens, and I think Lindsay will probably speak a little bit more to that piece of it. When the tap room opens, it becomes more of an experiential element. Like it's more of a fuller picture, but we just didn't have and that, you know, as it turns out, is going to be a little bit more speaking to the, like the tourist element as well. So we've had this like really weird, quiet time in New Orleans, one of the loudest cities in the country, to be like, hey, you guys, like come over here and try this thing. And people have just, it's been like minds blown. Like people are super into it. It's been very inspiring to see. I had no idea personally that this many people liked sake to begin with. But then how easy it is to convert them. And I think it's because of the quiet and the calm that we have right now. So we have that piece of it, but then we have like the whole like tourist element that we'll be able to like pull in at a later date as well. So we kind of have this like opportunity to just like very organically flow into people's awareness, and that's unusual and special, but also a pain in the ass.
Yeah, that kind of mirrors my experience. Like for I think the first 2 years, it was kind of like, okay, like I was kind of asked to like, all right, I'll be brewing, but if customers come in, I'll then transition to like tasting room service, like as I could.
Oh no, one of those.
Yeah,
One of
So
those jack of all
there's a
trades.
lot, you know, you got like your
Yeah.
hands full of like koji and rice, and like, oh, customer came in, priority here. But as it made sense, and like it is those moments where like we would get like 50-50. Some people like were very into sake, some people were like, no, I've had it once, I had hot sake and it
Oh
was
yeah,
horrible. And
big
so
big time answer.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Do you feel like that your client base like has a pretty good knowledge or experience with sake, or is that something that it's an uphill battle for a while?
It's definitely both. I would say that I am incredibly surprised at how many people already have a foundation of it. And when I say foundation, I don't just mean how most people started with like hot sake in a Japanese restaurant. Like that's really the majority. I don't really know anybody who didn't start that way, right? So like when I say people that already have a foundation, I don't mean those people because that's just kind of the baseline. I mean the people that have already experimented a little and tried it and like understand on a base level that like the cold sake is really the preferred version of it. It is, you know, representative of like a quality element as well. So people like when I go out and do grocery samplings, like go into the grocery stores and taste people on it. And I'm like, hey, do you want to try this new beverage? And they're like, yeah, what is it? And I'm like, sake. And they're like, I love it. I love sake. And I'm like,
Awesome.
really? Like, I didn't know. The thing is that nobody talks about it. You know, people talking about beer, like they talk about beer like too much. And
Absolutely.
you know, I guess like they're all of the other industries, like even seltzer, like even hard seltzer, which we have a little bit of an overlap with that because one of our products is a sparkling sake, and not sparkling like in the traditional sense necessarily, but in like a light fruity beverage that's 6.5% alcohol. So that's half of our product catalog, the other half being our traditional sakes. So you know, even like the seltzer world has like a buzz about it and people talk about it, and it's mostly just like a marketing ploy, which is fine. But I didn't realize that anybody was talking about sake. But they are, and they all have an understanding of it, but it's kind of like there's really no forum for conversation, and it hasn't yet been accepted into the fold of the American beverage experience.
Right.
And I think that's where companies like ours are like really trying to come in and like make that difference. And that's one of our main things is like, it's amazing. It's beautiful. Like I'm drinking our unfiltered right now. It's just like smooth and creamy and slightly floral and like kind of zippy in a certain way. And I don't think that this compares to any other drinking experience, like not beer, not wine, nothing.
Totally.
And it's just, I don't know, it's like pretty cool to be the company that like introduces this to like an entirely new.
Yeah, specifically like when you're kind of mentioning like the hot versus cold like angle and like the quality versus kind of the futsushu style that's brewed with kind of like leftover like rice flour, like there's a whole spectrum of quality within sake. So that's like definitely a thing. And when people, if they do have that, it's like, oh, well, I don't like sake. Like, well, one, you haven't tried ours.
Yeah, you
so
don't
let's start there.
Yeah, totally.
Two, like we offer like a regional, you know, like interpretation of our sake, but also, you know, we have these kind of fun infused spritzy like products. Like how can you not like this? And sure enough, like once you get them to try it, I don't know, like at least for us, you know, like 90+% of the time, it's like, oh yeah, I do like that. And I'm going to leave with a, you know, a mixed 4-pack.
Yeah, definitely. We 100% get that. And the people that say that they don't really like it, they don't have any, I feel like every single time they have no idea what's coming to them. And when they say they don't like it, the easiest thing would be to be like, oh, here, try the sparkling version because it drinks closer to a seltzer. But that's really not what we want to hook people on, because that's just kind of this like great side effect of having like a beautiful base product. So I've been trying to taste people on the unfiltered because I feel like that's the most interesting way to get people into it, because they love it like 99.9% of the time. I think I had one person that tasted it, and I think that they just didn't even know what to expect. They were like thinking it was going to be like a I don't know, like a rosé or something, and it's just totally different. But it was, yeah, so it's interesting to see people that are totally not on board with it and extremely skeptical, trying this like one beautiful product, or just open up to a whole new world. And that's pretty cool. And so our other owners, so like Lindsay's one half of this like crazy brain structure that we've got over here, like Nan being the other one. So it's Nan and Lindsay, our owners. And Nan, her thing that she always says, she's like, just try it. And that it sounds kind of silly, but it's like, no, seriously, just try it. Like really, you have absolutely nothing to lose. And I think that that's been a pretty easy like marketing campaign, is just try it. And people are like, okay, fine. And everybody's mind is blown. And they didn't even realize that they loved this whole new thing that's out there.
Yeah. Have you had any weird, I don't know, interactions is maybe not the right question, but like with sake being in a can? Because like I know that's not a traditional format.
It's definitely not a traditional format. I know that there's like a couple coming out of Japan that have it in that format. I think it's been just surprise in general, people being like, oh, I saw this from across the room and I didn't realize that's what it was going to be. Or like you offered me this brand new beverage to try and I didn't think it was going to be that. But it's gone exceptionally well. And I think the main reason and the whole foundation of like reasoning behind why Lindsay and Nan wanted to go that way was because it's a newer thing. Like I said, it isn't in the fold of the American beverage community just yet, but they wanted it to be. But most of what's out there is a little bit inaccessible for a few different reasons. One super simple reason is that there's a lot of larger format bottles, which just tend to be a price, like a higher price point. And so when you're putting it into these like little tiny 8-ounce cans, there you go. It just makes it a little bit more accessible. You don't have to put the investment into it to see if this is something that you want to experiment with or something that you want to try. So that's where the reasoning behind the cans came from. And I think if anything, people have been super excited about it because not only that being like the base reason, but then it's just it's eco-friendly, being an infinitely recyclable package.
Right.
You can pack it in, pack it out. You can take it like down here in Louisiana, like go into the bayou or like going out into the wetlands, like taking out the kayak or something like that, or going camping, or just literally just walking down the street because you can do that.
Because you can do that there.
Yeah. Like it's easy, accessible, and portable. We just want it to become a standalone everyday beverage for people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. So Lindsay, can you tell us about how you came to be a sake brewery owner? Like, what is that? What is that story?
Well, Nan and I are longtime friends. We're both from New Orleans, born and raised. And Nan and her husband traveled a lot. My husband and I travel a lot. And we were at dinner one night and Nan had just returned from a trip and from New York, and she made a comment, and we were at a small restaurant in New Orleans that when they were in New York, she started to notice that sake was popping up on menus that weren't just Asian restaurants. You could see it at fine dining restaurants across the board. If it was a French restaurant or a steakhouse, it might not be a big selection, but there was always a small selection of a few sakes. And I quickly commented, agreeing with her and saying she was right. And I noticed the same thing. And in New Orleans, I always say, we're always at least 5 years behind every trend. I think we and she kind of made that comment, and then I agreed, and she made another comment about how there is all these breweries, American breweries, sake breweries that were kind of opening up across the United States. There's a few opening. And I was like, yeah, it's interesting. Someone should open one up here because we live in the land of rice. Louisiana is the third largest rice producer in the United States. And and then the conversation ended. And, about 2 weeks later, there was a bag of rice when I got home sitting on my front doorstep with a note on it saying, I've done a lot of research. Give me a call. You're right. Someone should open a sake brewery, and it should be us. And that's kind of where it all started. And when I say that, that was probably about three years ago. And
Wow.
in the meantime, we did a ton of research, talked to a lot of people. And there was two things that were very important to us in the beginning is we wanted to be able to use a Louisiana rice, and then we wanted to go in a single serve can, because we felt that would give the people the opportunity to pick up our beverage and try it and accept, and realize that sake can really be drinking anywhere, anytime. My big thing is sake pairs with life. If you're going somewhere and you're going to have a drink, why can't it be sake? So
absolutely. Yeah, it's a very light beverage. It can be carbonated or not, but either way, like it's not as filling as beer. Like it's a dry beverage, can have a lot of or higher ABV, but still have, I don't know, like a light mouthfeel and body. Like it's just a very universal, drink for sure.
Yeah, and we truly believe, and that's part of it, how pure sake is. When you talk about a handcrafted product, sake is truly should be the definition of what a handcrafted product is. You have to touch it and you mold it every part of the sake brewing process.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just so pure and natural. And that's why I originally fell in love with it.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about like where you guys are getting your rice from? Because I know there's been a lot of like little PR news articles kind of about your partnership with LSU.
Yeah. So when like I said in the beginning, to us, it was very important to try to use a Louisiana rice, and we spent a lot of time up at the LSU Rice Research Center, and they were very patient and very kind to us, asking tons of questions. We, in the beginning, thought we could just drive up there and ask for a short grain rice and they would hand it over to us. And that was not the case. We actually probably went up there about 7 times until we found the rice that would work for us. And that's solely because Louisiana doesn't grow short grain rice. We grow all long grain rice here in Louisiana, a few medium grains, but no one grows the short grain rice because Louisiana, it's all for table food. So in America, we eat long grain rice. So they pretty much almost got to the point where they're saying, we don't have a rice for you. And we thought that's where the road was going to end. And oddly enough, one of the head guys up there called Nan on a Saturday and said, "Nan, I have the perfect rice for you." And she was like, "All right, you got to be kidding me. How do you have the perfect rice for me? We've been up there 7 times. We've told you what we need. We're looking for these characteristics." And he's like, "I just forgot about it." LSU had created this strand about 7 years ago, and they developed it, but they had never really grew it because no one wanted it. And so he had just kind of forgotten about it and it was shelved. And so we're like, "Great, can we have some?" And he said, "Well, no, I have the seed." So we said, "Okay, what does that mean?" And he goes, "Well, we have to we can plant some and we can give you some." We're like, "Great, let's put it in the ground." He goes, "Well, we have to wait till March." So, and he goes, "How much do you need?" And we said, "Well, we need 2 pounds so we can have it tested to see if it's going to work for us." And he said, "Well, the minimum I can grow you is 7,000 pounds. So we said, so she's like, "Okay, well, hold on here. Let me talk to Lindsay and I'm going to give you a call back." So we actually committed to planting the rice and growing the 7,000 pounds so we can test the 2 pounds and to see how if it would work for sake, for the characteristics. And we were happy when it came back, and it turns out to be a great sake making rice. So it was quite the process and a long process, but it was the right process for us.
That's awesome. Yeah, to like found a sake brewery and to essentially kind of come up with a super unique rice strain. Like I'll say, like at Ben's, like we use the Calrose varietal, like mostly out of California. I think we do source some from Arkansas occasionally, but it was kind of like, and that's how the other sake brewery I worked at, it was like 100% Calrose. Like it grows well on the West Coast, so, and like it works well enough. That's a very cool like thing that you guys have going, that like your rice is kind of unique to your product, your process. And because again, like each rice varietal will grow koji, will wash differently, will soak differently, will steam differently, like everything about it. So like you're truly creating a unique product.
Correct. And that's where Hector's become a great asset, and his patience and, you know, learning this different soakings and the koji and like how to grow it on this rice. And he's done a great job with it.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, so Hector, like, how did you end up touching a lot of rice? And that's how I kind of tell my friends who aren't in the industry, like, well, what do you do? I don't know. I touch rice like all the time. I'm always touching rice. So like, how did you end up touching a lot of rice?
Yeah, I do touch a lot of rice. Well, I guess it kind of started when I got out of college. You know, I got into home brewing, but beer. So throughout that process, brewing beer is okay, but I found the fermentation being fascinating. So, you know, through the process, I fermented peppers, anything that can be fermented. I wanted to learn about the process, fermented everything I could find. And not until recently, maybe 3-4 years ago, a friend of mine said, "Hey, have you ever thought about brewing sake?" I said, "I've never even thought about it, but it's something you can ferment." It's like, I want to learn about this. This sounds interesting. So throughout my processes of, you know, I like learning things. So I learn about fermentation. I read about books about sake. I watched YouTube videos, watched movies and things. And yeah, it's been an exciting, fascinating experience is learning about sake. And now I appreciate it more so because it's not just something they serve at a sushi restaurant. There's so much complexity. There's so much nuances. It's a truly amazing drink, which, you know, several years ago, I didn't did not realize that.
Totally. Yeah, I kind of fell into the sake world. Like I graduated college with an education degree and a history degree. I'm like, all right, I'll be a teacher then. And it's 2008, and like school districts were laying people off like crazy. And I was like, well, I homebrewed in college, and I kind of like that. So like, what if I got a job at like a winery and like wanted to brew beer, kind of thing. So it ended up that in the same town I went to college in, there was a large sake brewery there. I had never, literally never like had a sip of sake before. So like show up, didn't know anything, but like seeing the process, tasting like the fresh pressed nama, like it converted me for sure. Like it's such a hands-on process, right? Like I think like in terms of like comparing beer to sake, like as the brewer, you are manipulating, you're changing the batch like as you interact with it daily. And I don't think that's a similar experience to beer.
Yeah, it's completely different. That was one of the things from the beer side. It's a lot more hands-on. Exactly. When I say handcrafted, it truly is handcrafted because you're from pulling out of the steam, making the koji by hand. Everything is done with intention, with a process, and it's every little degree makes a difference. Every strain of rice, it all imparts a significant impact on the sake itself.
Totally. To put you on the spot, do you have a favorite sake that you produce? I know you've got 2 traditional and 2 infused. Well, like what's your go-to after work drink?
To be honest, I like the sparkling.
Yeah.
It's so of the sparklings we have a passion fruit and a blood orange, and I kind of gravitate to the passion fruit. It's a little less sweet, a little bit more, I say maybe fruity.
Mm-hmm.
And after a hard day working at sake, where you're sweating and working hard, I just enjoy drinking that.
Totally. My wife can attest to this, but like, all right, like now I'm back to like brewing sake. I've got a lot of access to like high proof alcohol. Like, like the batch we just pressed was a little over 19%. And it's like fresh, it's the Namagenshu, and like it tastes amazing. And like it's so easy to drink. So I'm like, all right, now I need to like step back. I need to like get back to the beer world. Like, what can I do that's going to be like a session sake? And like our answer at the time was a Yutang, so a yuzu, tangerine, mandarin sake spritzer. But 6%, 6.5%, like sessionable, like very fruity, and like that's become my favorite. And it's like, I know, like, I mean, the base products obviously is my favorite, but like without a good base, you couldn't have everything else. But like the sessionable sake is also my go-to at Ben's. Well, what are we doing here? Oh, we got some.
Let me, if I may jump.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, if I may jump in, I have a question for Lindsay. You said that you did a lot of research as you geared up to start Wetlands, and just curious what that involved, because it's one thing to have a vision about starting your own sake brewery. It's another thing to actually execute on that. And there's so many, as you know, steps along the way and things that you have to sort of learn about. So what was that about? And also, I'm just really curious about, I know that you're doing some interesting stuff with environmental conservation, and I'd like to hear more about that.
Okay, yeah, I think mostly, like I said, we did a lot of research. It was literally, we read everything we could possibly get our hands on about sake, about all the way down to, all right, who is the easiest consumer to convert to drinking sake? A lot about rice, a lot about the process, equipment, different equipment, why we should buy this piece. We became avid readers, and we read everything, and we asked a lot of questions that people probably were like, all right, come on, but we did, and we did it to make sure that we truly understood it, and that we were making the right decisions, or the best decisions that we could at the time. So that's what I think was the most important. And that's why it took us, 3 years to get here, is because we really front loaded it in with research and asking questions before just diving in and saying, hey, we're going to figure this out. We wanted to figure it out on the front end and then build from there. And I think, and then the conservation piece. So we do, obviously our name is Wetlands Sake, and that is for a meaning. Obviously Nan and I both grew up on the coast, the Gulf Coast, and we always knew the benefits and the resources that the wetlands provided to us for fishing, for recreation, going skiing. We grew up doing that. But also the importance of what it does to protect us from hurricanes and storms. And when we started spending a lot of time at the Rice Research Center, that's when we really realized how important the wetlands are for the cultivation of rice, which is, and that kind of made it with the aha moment for us, being like, wait, it's so important, not only for sake rice, but I mean, it's a worldwide food staple. People live off of rice. And so wetlands everywhere are so important. So that was our big thing, is, okay, now it was like, hey, we want to do single serve sake, and we want to have it Louisiana rice. And like, now this is like the true thing behind it, is we're going to give 2% of profits back to save the wetlands. And it's America's wetlands, because it's truly beneficial to rice and sake in the country. So that's why we decided to do it.
Awesome. One thing I was, excuse me, been meaning to ask, have any of you, all of you, come across any interesting regional food pairings with sake? Because I know, like, right, like traditionally, I think our demographic, customer is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go have sushi and I'll have some sake. But I think
Yeah.
like as we think about what it means to be a regional producer, American producer, like there's a little bit more to that.
Correct.
Yeah,
And I think
awesome.
I think that's a kind of our big thing is it's not just it. Yes, obviously it goes great with Asian foods, but we think, I always say, it just pairs with life. But my favorite food probably to drink sake with, that's, right now we're about ending up crawfish season in Louisiana. And I mean, the unfiltered with crawfish, the spiciness of crawfish is phenomenal. But I also love our unfiltered with like a cheeseburger. It's just, I think it's delicious. And, the sparklings, so I would have to go with crawfish right now because that's what we're eating a lot of. But I can go down a whole list of what it goes with. But that's my number one right now is the crawfish.
I totally have to agree on the crawfish front, and that's interesting because I'm new to Louisiana, less than a year now. Crawfish is new to me, but I just know that you're supposed to drink like an ice cold Dixie, like a lager with the crawfish. So. And being super new to that entire experience, and also new to sake like altogether, just kind of like naturally these two things like came together to be an amazing combination. There's something about, like the very like mouth coating, soothing nature of our unfiltered that just makes like the super spicy dynamic flavor profile that you get with crawfish. It's just a great combination. And I agree with cheeseburger too, because, and that's what I had for lunch, with the unfiltered, it's just like, it's a nice, like layer that it adds to it, and it breaks through it, but doesn't compete with it too much. But also something super interesting is that Hector and I did a sake and cheese pairing class recently. And I was totally blown away because I kind of always thought of our sparkling as more of a standalone beverage. Like the unfiltered and the filtered can be with food or without food. Totally great as standalone. Like obviously, like I've just been drinking this by itself tonight, which has been amazing. But I was really impressed to learn that actually the sparkling ones are a beautiful pairing for cheese in particular. Like the blood orange, like there's no way you would think that something that tastes like an orange creamsicle is gonna like pair well with cheese, but I think Hector, right? They had like a honey goat cheese or something like that.
Yeah, the cheese pairing with the stock, it was just amazing. Kind of same, echoing what you said. The carbonation tends to clean your palate.
Yeah.
With the cheeses, and some of the notes from the cheese kind of mimic whatever's happening to the sake. And it was truly amazing experience.
Yeah, it was unexpected. So I think that's kind of how my whole experience personally has been with like the food pairing elements of it, is I just didn't realize how much it was going to like elevate and lift foods other than, like, obviously it's great with seafood and all of its variation, but all foods other than that as well. So that's been, I mean, that's all like kind of part of the whole experience.
Well, I was hoping to, excuse me, to hear your experience, Katrina, because I'm also from the West Coast, and like coming to North Carolina, I'm like, all right, what are we getting ourselves into here? And a lot of pork, a lot of barbecue, a lot of fried chicken. I'm like, all right, so like, cool. So like none of that, conceptually seems to pair with sake, but during the COVID quarantine like shutdown that we were all in, like, I've got a smoker here. Like, why don't I just, like get some like pork shoulders, some local fish, like just like see what happens. I don't know. Like, this is not exact science, but we can do some things. And the pairing I came up with was like pork, but like also braised with a like Western vinegary barbecue sauce. Mm-hmm. And like our particular house sake like had a lot of like body and mouth feel while being dry, like low acid, and it just like totally worked. And it was just this like holy hell moment. And now I've not been able to sell any barbecue restaurant like on this concept. Like price points, too high, the concept's too foreign. Like it just, like, to them doesn't make sense, but like eating it and like, yeah, this actually like melds really well. And it's something that I don't think gets talked about. I don't know, like.
No, I agree. I agree with you totally. I think that's coming. Last time I was in New York, probably about 6 years ago, I was at a very fine dining French restaurant, and that's kind of what opened my eyes up truly to sake. When we did a tasting menu, and actually 2 of the courses came out. We did food and wine, and 2 of the courses came out with sake. And when the first course came in, I was like, okay, like this is weird, but then all of a sudden I like tried it, and it was like the sake. You know, when you do a food pairing with wine, it's always like, oh, and these flavors and this wine, like, and it, you know, it helps you. It's always about how the food and wine compare, where I feel like sake always just enhances the food. And it's like, and it just truly like a light bulb went off my head and be like, this makes so much sense. Like, and I think people are realizing it. It's like, you know, if you're doing it with the tasting menu, it like, maybe the foods, it's great, but the sake makes it even better in a different way. And no matter what you're eating, like with the barbecue, I totally get what you're saying, because it's like a high fat food like that. Like when you drink like a sake that's like low in acid and dry, it tastes delicious because it cuts through that fat, and it just produces a better taste in your mouth. So I think it's coming. I think I'm very hopeful that, like, you know, you'll start seeing the sakes and barbecue restaurants and pizza joints. You know, we're doing a tasting room, but we're not going to do a kitchen in it, because we want to, we have a restaurant next to us that's going to do a lot of our food for us. But we also want to bring in like, hey, tonight's pizza night. Come eat pizza and sake. Oh, we're doing barbecue tonight, because we want to pair it with foods that's out of the box that people don't realize how great it is to have sake with that style food. Yeah,
that's awesome. Like I was skeptical before, like doing it for myself, but like now I'm a full-on believer that, like, yeah, sake not only like it's not a background thing, but yeah, it helps elevate the food that you are eating.
It's kind of, you just have to, it's changing that mindset of, oh, sake goes great with Asian food. And once you start molding or changing the mindset of people and getting them to try it, it's, I think that little light bulb will go off in a lot of people's head and they'll get it. But yeah, I think we're on the right path there.
Yeah, totally. Like it's not obviously not going to happen overnight, but yeah, the more local restaurants and local customers that we get requesting our products across the country, like I do think it will happen. Like people will come to view this as like a great beverage for any purpose.
Correct. Yeah.
Let's see. I don't. Oh well. Hey, the Q&A session has shown up. What's the biggest lesson you've learned starting your own business? It seems scary as hell. I agree to that. How do you make the leap?
Sorry, taking off mute. Yeah, it is scary as hell, and you just have to go in every day with confidence. And I feel like every day, most days it's just constant problem solving. But you put your head down, you figure out solutions, and when you make a decision, you stick with it because you feel like it's the best decision for that day and that time. There's no right answer. It is a leap of faith. But you can't walk the line of yes or no. You have to fully commit. And I think that's the most important thing, is to fully commit and to do the research and ask the questions. And, so that's what I think.
Awesome. Yeah, I know the owners of Ben's, the ladies, like they did the research that they could at the time. And like they basically both learned how to brew sake via YouTube videos, just like whatever they could figure out. Like they hadn't been to Japan, but they knew they like sake, and they thought it would stand out like amidst a sea of beer. And they handled the aesthetics and like the kitchen, like everything else, and like it panned out for them. But yeah, it's absolutely a leap of faith. And like, I don't know, there's
I guess that's the thing. Yeah, there's a million reasons to say I'm not going to do that, but if you can find that one good reason to do it, I think and you can make sense of it and you can make it a viable decision, it's definitely a leap of faith. But it's a fun leap of faith once you commit to it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I know from my own self, it's like, oh yeah, I'll open a brewery in Portland. Like I'll do that. And then like you start seeing them closing or like things turn, like, no, too rich for my blood.
It's
but like to have the courage. I mean, that's probably got to be like part of, right, the ingredients of like building a business. Like you got to have some courage, some stamina.
Yeah, and the drive. Yeah, the drive, and it's the work ethic to do it. And there's no days off when you're starting your new business. So but I think it's gonna be worth it. I think it's really exciting. It's being really well received in New Orleans. We just launched in the rest of Louisiana. And it's fun to hear the feedback that we're getting from the population. And we hope it continues to grow, and we hope to continue getting a following. Because I truly believe, our following just opens people up to trying more sake. And that's what's important to me.
Yeah. And us at Ben's, like we're still like, right, we're collective Southerners, even though like I'm not at all, and Katrina's probably not at all, but like we are all working in the same game at this point. Like I very much have customers be like, oh yeah, like I live in Virginia and we went to North American Sake, and like they told us to come here, and then like we told them to go to the Void Sake, who also opened up recently. Like we're all this like small, tight-knit group, and like we all have to, I don't know, look out for each other, like make people aware that like more than just like one sake brewery exists.
Correct. And I think that's a huge importance. And like I found, in New Orleans, just it's hard to find it's hard to go into a grocery store and find a great quality sake just to bring home to drink. So I hope that also, I hope the imports can continue and we get, great, especially in New Orleans, we need that, just different higher quality sakes to try. And as people's minds are opening up, have our book continue to grow. I mean, I know when you go to large urban cities, you have the option for sakes under the sun, but in New Orleans it's pretty limited. And I think this is kind of the start to have to open people's eyes up to sake.
Totally. So this question is from Andrew, brewer owner extraordinaire of North American Sake. He is kind of asking curiously, if you could, how would you describe the character of your rice, since it is a proprietary blend, like compared to, because I do think like most of the North American sake industry uses Calrose rice, which is our kind of like table eating rice, at least on the West Coast. Are there any like nuances? Like, is there anything different?
I think, it's what I can say is I think it's unique to us just because it's grown here in Louisiana. It's a short grain rice that has a lot of the same characteristics as a lot of the higher end sake or brewing rices out of Japan. Yeah,
and I, being a West Coast person, grew up in Southern California, moved to Oregon. Like I did not know, to be honest, that rice was grown in Louisiana or Arkansas or the Carolinas, and I also feel pretty silly about that now, because to me rice was grown in California. Like it's Calrose, it's just the rice. just very basic. But yeah, I'm very, I would love to try some of your product with your homegrown rice.
Yes, we'll get you some.
Whenever that may happen.
We have been in the hole, as I like to say, every day is in the brewery on the floor,
Yeah.
Trying to get this sake out the door.
Well, and I
now
know I know how hard the owners of Ben's work to maintain the kitchen and the front of house bar staff and like to build out this or that. And like I'm just, like I don't ask for anything, like I don't cause any problems. I'm just gonna continue like production. But there's obviously like tons of hats that you wear as a business owner.
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, and you help out, there's the hats of the front of the house stuff with the kitchen or just, supporting Katrina and the stuff that she needs from us for publicity or marketing stuff. And then also it's, supporting Hector. We're a pretty big shop and we have three brewers on staff right now. And, they're moving and they're lifting. And so we're back there helping wherever we can too. I mean, Nan was in the koji room most of the week helping make koji because
awesome.
They needed the extra hands. So it's you have to build a team in that team. There's a lot, trust and faith that we can all help out where it's needed.
Yeah, and that makes it feel like a family kind of based company. Like you're all in it to help each other out. Like you all want to succeed on this endeavor.
Yeah.
Crazy as hell as it seemed like at the end, but you're getting there.
Yeah, I think my husband definitely thought I was crazy going down this path in the beginning, but he's probably one of our biggest fans now. So we've converted him. And he was a heavy red wine drinker, American red wine drinker.
Wow.
And now he drinks sake almost every night.
Well, that's quite a shift because like I've been asked like directly, like, well, like if I'm a Merlot drinker, like what kind of sake should I drink? And that is a bit of a head scratcher.
He drank full body American caps. And every Sunday night we do steak night because we have 3 young kids. And he now opens our unfiltered and drinks that with his steak every night or every Sunday night. So
well, I might have to borrow that idea like for our red winers, because it's totally like a question. It's like, well, how do I mean I guess conceptually like American cuisine, right? Like how do I pair this with red meat? Like that's kind of where we're all at, unless you're on the coast, maybe.
Yeah, you get all the seafood. But I think it's, as Katrina said earlier, Nan's kind of thing is like, just try it. Like let us open your eyes. You just have to take a sip.
Yeah.
And so that's our big thing is just take a sip.
Totally.
I think it'll
another question that was asked, have any of you, let's say that, traveled to Japan or like visited any Japanese breweries? Because I know I personally have not. And I always felt like that was kind of a I don't know, like a badge of honor in some like weird way. Like, I think I've not been to Japan, but like I can brew like a good decent sake.
If not for COVID, I think that
right. Well, that's
more of us like Hector and myself being newer. I think that would have been something that would have been in the cards. But that's the biggest hindrance so far. It's definitely like top of my list is to travel to Japan. My sister-in-law taught English there for a few years and has always talked about it. And previous to that, I was always like, oh, I want to go to like the Czech Republic or Russia or, just all these other different random crazy places. And it was really her that explained to me like all of the I don't know, it's almost this like esoteric kind of like hard to explain like beauty that comes from it. And so it's high on my list. And I probably would have been there by now, if not for that pesky pandemic.
I've been to Japan. I was younger. So I wasn't I was interested in sake. I don't know if I was legally allowed to be drinking sake as an American, but I did try some and I did like it back then. But I do think our goal is to get back over there, get our team over there to continue, because as we know, we've learned a lot, we know a lot, but the education and the continuing of it, I think, is very important.
Yeah. Well, not to put too much pressure on Wes, but like maybe there's a way to kind of do some kind of coordinated American brewery, Japan brewery exchange, cultural exchange or something like that. Because I know I'm long overdue. I've been brewing sake in America for 7-8 years now. Never been. And it's just one of those things that just, yeah,
it completes the circle. Yeah. I think it would be really cool.
Yeah, we definitely have to work on that as an association, because there are too many good brewers coming up here that haven't had that exposure, and I think it'd be great for learning more about your craft, and for the Japanese side also to learn about what you're all up to as well. So that'd be great to do that. Looks like we're coming close to the end here. I don't know. Patrick, do you want to?
I don't know if I have any other like original, like thoughtful questions. I mean, besides getting like in depth of like what kind of press are you guys using, but they're I don't know where this is going, but an anonymous question: have you met any of the other North American sake brewers?
I've met you.
Yeah, we got at least one.
Yeah.
It is an interesting, like, I don't know, question for me at least, because the Southeast, right? Like, so there's a brewery in Charlottesville, Virginia. Forgive me, guys, if you're watching, but I think Lexington, Kentucky, Nashville, Tennessee, Asheville, North Carolina, New Orleans, Louisiana. I don't know if you'll account like for Texas, but like, that's at least 6 breweries like in the Southeast, regionally speaking. Like, it's more than I would have ever expected, to be honest, because again, like my West Coast bias like was just like, well, like the Japanese American population and the access to rice in Sacramento would have allowed this makes sense, but we're really seeing the growth like here, like in our regional community.
And I hope more to come. I mean, I think it's great, and I'm seeing, I see it too. And I think, and I've spoken to quite a few of the other breweries. I haven't met all of them, but everyone's been great and very welcoming. And I think that's the key for all of us, is to continue to grow and talk and communicate and watch sake kind of catch on in the United States.
Totally. Yeah, I know, like from my own personal experience, and I think Katrina can probably echo this, I hope, but like the craft brewing community like has such a tight-knit community. Like, things certainly get sloppy at times, like during events, but like overall, like it's information sharing, experience sharing, like, and you can relate to your coworkers who are all facing the same, and let's be real, like uphill battle of like, how are you going to sell sake in the United States?
Yeah, definitely. I can certainly echo that. It's interesting to come from a support network of 9,000 breweries in the United States into the support network that we have with the association here. But I'll also kind of echo what Lindsay was saying, is that everybody that we've encountered personally so far has been so welcoming and gracious. And that is one of the things that I enjoyed about being in. And the reason that I wanted to get into craft beer to begin with was because everybody's just like your buddy, and everybody's there to help you. And we're not like, it was never a competition thing. It was more just like we're all just doing this thing that everybody loves, and how cool is that? And so that kind of translates here as well, from what I've seen. And that's something that I really appreciate about it as well. And I guess like the one thing about sake that I think is really special that I've experienced so far is that there really is a very different whole experience to drinking it and to being involved in it. And it's kind of hard to like put your finger on what that is. And I think you probably all know exactly what I mean. Is it is very special. It is different. It is set apart. It's a little bit more, I don't want to say romantic, but it's more special, and a little bit more unique. So I'm pretty excited to have made this transition, because I just kind of thought like, well, I guess my skills will lend well to this. And then I guess I could have gotten into it and been like, I don't like this. This isn't cool. It's not the same exact thing as beer, but it's kind of better in some ways. I mean, I still like love a German lager, but like this is its own special, unique entity. And that's been pretty cool to get into, and a lot more than I expected.
Yeah, that's very much like, nobody's quoting me, so I don't need to like.
I will. I'll quote you.
Say that, sure.
I'm writing it down.
But it's like, yeah, like I don't know, like I got into the whole thing because I thought beer was like the end all be all. But except my pathway was like wine and then sake, then beer, then back to sake. And like, no, like sake is a much cooler beverage. Like yeah, the hands-on approach, like everything about it, like it is just a better beverage, more universal, like all of these things. Yeah, instead of like, oh yeah, you gotta like dump your yeast and like dry hop on day 5, like, you know, no, like I'm like touching the koji and making sure the humidity is within this like specific range, and it's just a much more intensive process, which I was at least exposed to. I would love to hear if Hector was a bit surprised, because like coming from beer to sake with no background, like that must have been a hell of experience.
Yeah, it was. It's a big learning curve, because like you say, with beer, do you mash, strike out a certain temperature, throw your yeast in, dry hop, and that's it.
Yeah.
With sake, you have to tend to it. You have to, like you say, you constantly weighing, constantly measuring, constantly tasting, constantly guiding it kind of where you want it to go. So yeah, I didn't anticipate such intensity, but I find it rewarding when you finally make the sake and like, well, this has actually happened because of these processes that we've taken.
Totally.
It's a big learning curve.
Yeah, that has always been my like moment of pride when we're pressing the batch and like you get your first kind of runnings, your first drippings, and like, yeah, right, this is a good batch. Like we did it good. Like it's, I don't know, there's this very pleasant moment, and not to romanticize the whole thing, but like, yeah, it's just a very different experience than beer. Like all right, IPA, like for days. Oh, porter, cool, IPA, and like this is just a different thing. It's,
basically, whenever you're doing beer, it's kind of like following a recipe.
right.
Where when you're making sake, you kind of are, but really kind of not either.
Well, yeah, because every like I don't know what your koji situation is, but like ours varies with the local environment. And so in the dead of winter, when we brew the most, like we have a certain protocol, but then you kind of try and shift with it, like as humidity increases and temperature increases. And like, I'm not great at it still, like 3 years in, but like, it's it's a living thing that you need to tend as best you can.
Yes, yeah. When the koji room, when the temperature fluctuates, it's getting warmer now, and you could see some changes going on. So you need remedy, things that may or may not be expected.
Yeah. So just a comical question, but like, do they have you? Are you sleeping at the brewery? Are you tending to the koji like at that level?
We have spent a couple nights at the brewery.
Really?
Yeah. At the very beginning, when we didn't know,
yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
Trying to figure out how the room reacts to different things. I think now we've got the process kind of tailored, so we say, okay, well, we stay late this day, but then we can come in later in the morning, or come in early in the morning and leave a little earlier.
Totally.
So I got our cadences kind of marked out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's always a learning process. And I think I say this often to people, like that's kind of what I enjoy about brewing sake, is that like every day you're learning something. Like every batch you brew, like there's something different to tweak or to manage or like to do something differently. Because like while there are hundreds and thousands of years of information in Japan, like it doesn't necessarily apply to the rice we're using, the koji we're using, the yeast we're using, the humidity we're in. Like everything is a completely different scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also regional, because I'm sure down here in New Orleans we have a lot higher humidity as it would be in Asheville or in California or in different places. So you have to accommodate for those
Totally
different climates.
Yeah, I'm a West Coaster, like through and through. Like any humidity I've learned is too much humidity. Like I grew up on a beach town in Southern California and then moved to Oregon. Like humidity doesn't exist, and like I just don't know really how to handle that, I guess. So it's a work in progress. But our koji does change, like from dry winter, like throughout, and our koji grows better in the dead of summer with that humidity. But we don't really need to brew because like we're so busy during the summer, like had to brew. So it's a weird balance that we're trying to kind of construct.
So yeah, I think we're coming across a little bit over an hour now. So just want to thank you all for a really, really interesting discussion. It's so exciting to hear about what you're all doing at Wetlands. I cannot wait to try your sake, and cannot wait to get down there and visit you all. It's New Orleans and sake. I mean, what can be better than that? So I really can't wait to get down there and visit your facilities and drink your product. So thank you again, everyone, for your time today. I want to thank our viewers for joining us tonight. As I said, this will be recorded, so please feel free to check our website in the coming days if you want to revisit our conversation. And be sure to check in on our website, www.sakeassociation.org, for updates on our activities, and also check out our social media for further announcements about other events that we'll be hosting in the future. So with that, I'd like to raise a glass and do a kanpai. Kanpai. Thank you all. Good night.
Right.